Hello there, my fellow notebook aficionados, and welcome back to the channel. This is the refreshed MSI Titan 18HX, and it already marks the third 18-incher for 2025 after we have already reviewed the ROG Scar 18 and Gigabyte's all-new Master 18. In stark contrast to these two, MSI only did a spec refresh for this year, which is fine, I would say, since the Titan's chassis is still one of the best in this form factor, both in terms of looks and quality. So we will mostly focus on performance for today, and without wanting to spoil our review too much, the story for the Titan is a bit complicated. On the one hand, it's a true desktop replacement with all the features and overall computing grunt for almost everything you can think of, but at the same time some things are a bit indecisive. And it seems like the 18-inch behemoth isn't quite sure if it wants to be a gaming laptop or rather a portable workstation, so it sometimes falls short in both use cases. But enough with the cryptic intro, let's get into it. Our sample of MSI's fastest, most badass laptop comes of course with the laptop RTX 5090 running at its maximum TGP of 175 watts. And alongside the Blackwell GPU we also get Intel's fastest mobile silicon, the Core Ultra 9 285HX. And so far, only the Razer Blade 18 has been announced betting on the same chip, but according to our testing, well, I guess there is a reason the majority of manufacturers opt for the 275HX, but more on that later. And I know you all want to see the Blade 18 as well, and trust me, I'm on it and doing my very best behind the scenes to get a sample ASAP. And before you ask, for the Raider A18 as well, since I want to see for myself what AMD's new X3D chip can do. So keep an eye on the channel and hit the sub button to ensure you do not miss any of our upcoming coverage. When it comes to RAM, our Titan for 2025 comes with a more modest config of 64 gigs, even though the frequency has been increased slightly. Unfortunately, we also only get 2 SODIMMs, which is a bit of an odd move if you ask me. Sure, you can still get up to 128 GB of RAM once those 64 gig modules become widely available, and this should be more than enough for most use cases, but still it's a bit of a weird downgrade. When it comes to storage, you can still go absolutely crazy though, and our sample already nets you 6 TB of crazy fast NVMe SSDs, and with one PCIe Gen 5 slot and a total of 3 PCIe Gen 4 slots, you can easily download your entire Steam library without a problem. Since we are dealing with the same chassis and display for 2025, I will just give you a brief overview of the Titan, since I really want to focus on performance today. I mentioned it already, but when it comes to 18-inch laptops, the Titan is one of my favorite models. Its understated design doesn't scream gamer, but it also offers enough visual finesse to not be boring. And with the RGB keyboard and seamless trackpad, you can go quite crazy with your lighting options. Build quality is also really solid, and this puppy is a proper tank. There's no flex anywhere, and the hinges are stiff enough for the massive display. The keyboard offers the same mechanical cherry switches, and while the numpad still has to make do with membrane variants, it doesn't get much better than this for games and typing. Sure, it's a bit louder than a regular keyboard, so you might get the occasional raised eyebrows from a coworker or your SO, but I mean that's the price you have to pay for this typing experience. The haptic trackpad works well enough on most occasions, though very much as in last year's model, it can sometimes be a tad unreliable. It's not a deal breaker, but something you should be aware of. Regarding ports, you should hardly miss anything with a pair of Thunderbolt 5 USB-Cs, 3 USB-As, HDMI 2.1, 2.5 Gigabit Ethernet, and a full-size SD card reader. The 4K 120Hz mini LED panel is also the same as in 2024, which is both really good and also a bit of a missed opportunity. Sure, you could argue that a QHD display is still better suited for the hardware, and I will discuss this in more detail in a little bit, but if you ask me, we have enough options with this resolution on the market already. So I think it's great that MSI sticks to 4K here to give you the option should you want the crisper experience. 120Hz is also plenty for most games. Unless you're into super competitive shooters, then you'd have to opt for a different laptop or add a second screen to your setup. Unfortunately, we still do not get G-Sync, and that really stinks, especially in 4K, since chances are you will not always be able to get up to 120Hz without a problem. That said, I did not run into super excessive tearing, but it's definitely something to keep in mind for the Titan. But apart from that, this panel is simply gorgeous. It gets super bright even in SDR, and in HDR, well, have your sunglasses ready. And in combination with the high resolution, it makes for a super immersive gaming experience. I played a fair bit of The Last of Us 2 on the Titan and easily got around 100 FPS in 4K, and since Sony titles always offer very good HDR implementation, it's been a feast visually, even though this game is an emotional roller coaster lasting for 25 hours. As a creator, I would have wished for switchable local dimming, but MSI added pre-calibrated color profiles, so that's at least something. But if you're doing color critical work, just be aware of potential issues, since mini LED panels with local dimming in SDR handle contrast a little differently. It wouldn't be a problem for our videos, but if I were still in post-production for stills, I'm not quite sure if I would trust this display alone completely. But if you do this kind of work professionally, you will probably have a reference display anyway, so again, it's not a huge deal. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk performance. The Intel Core Ultra 9 285HX is supposed to be the fastest mobile CPU Intel offers, but on paper it's pretty much the same as the 275HX, with just slightly higher single-core frequencies. So we do get the same 8 performance cores paired with 16 efficiency variants, and in our CPU rating it's pretty much on par with its technically lower tiered sibling, which we have already tested in the SCAR 18 for example. Compared to last year's 14900HX though, you do get a solid uplift in performance, especially in multi-core scenarios with basically the same power envelope, while single-core performance shows only modest improvements. Again, so far only the Blade 18 has been announced with the same CPU, so I'm quite curious to see how it handles in the even thinner chassis. System performance tested with PCMark is a bit of a disappointment, and both the Alienware M18 and last year's Titan show better results, though this will hardly translate to your general user experience. But of course, GPU performance is where it's at for 2025, especially when we are talking about 5090 laptops. At least that's how it should be, but I get the feeling that synthetics do not really paint an accurate picture here, but more about that in a little bit. In Firestrike graphics, the Titan is the fastest laptop in our database in this form factor, but the difference to the 2024 Titan is basically non-existent. TimeSpy shows a bigger difference, but it's still not massive, and only in something heavily GPU bound like Port Royal is the 5090 able to improve significantly upon its mobile predecessor and score a 14% lead over the 4090 in last year's Titan. But again, synthetics only tell half the story, so let's get into the real world. Kicking things off with Blender, the Titan is fast, but not really a lot faster than its 2024 variants, even though it does score a solid lead over most of the fastest 4090 equipped flagships. Photoshop and Premiere again show modest gains for the new core components, and I also did a Resolve export test with one of our videos and against the Alienware M18, which I still have in the studio. The Titan can finish the render of our Zephyrus G16 video quite a bit faster with an almost 2-minute lead. The general editing experience for our kind of video production is also amazing, and especially thanks to the increased VRAM of the 5090, it is a much more productive workflow. But the Titan is of course not only a workstation but also a gaming machine, so let's see how it handles when it comes to virtual entertainment. For Cyberpunk, it can secure the top spot with a pretty sizable lead even in raw FPS numbers, and no matter the resolution, with the biggest difference to the 4090 being in 4K. Baldur's Gate shows pretty much the same story, but with a much smaller overall performance gain in general, so as always, if the 5090 and therefore the 2025 Titan makes sense for you, really depends on your overall use cases and especially the games you're playing. Ideally, I would have been able to compare both the 4090 Titan and the new one, but unfortunately I did not have access to last year's variant for this video. However, as I mentioned, I have the Alienware 18-incher, and given that it's also one of the fastest 4090 laptops you can get, I did some additional side-by-side benchmark runs to see the real-life FPS differences you will get for Nvidia's latest mobile flagship. Cyberpunk again skates very well with the new architecture and shows quite a performance difference in all resolutions with an almost 10 FPS lead in 4K. Black Myth Wukong shows a similar situation, again with the biggest difference in 4K, while Monster Hunter Wilds shows a smaller but still noticeable improvement for the 2025 Titan. Indiana Jones runs quite well natively, and compared to the 4090, the action-adventure title offers around 10% more FPS. These are all the games we have tested on the Titan, rendered natively and in Full HD up to 4K. And by the way, if you have any additional games you would like to see in our testing, please let us know below so we can see if we can implement them into our rotation. But of course, in today's day and age, raw GPU performance is only half the story, and upscaling and framegen are important features that can significantly alter your gaming experience. Kicking things off in 2560 by 1600 to allow for the same comparison with the Alienware and running Cyberpunk in all of its path-traced glory nets us the roughly 15% performance improvement we have seen before natively, while the gap widens significantly when either going from DLSS quality to performance or when opting for framegen. And since the 4090 does not support multi-frame generation, it's a clear win for the 5090 obviously. But I also wanted to see if you could drive the Titan's display in its native 4K resolution properly, so I turned down the settings slightly and opted for normal ray tracing instead of path tracing, and I was able to go from 22 FPS natively all the way up to around 130 with 3x framegen. And to be honest, it's been a super smooth gaming experience. I know there are discussions about fake frames, but I wasn't able to see any obvious visual problems, and input lag wasn't an issue for me either. And especially with the new transformer model, even DLSS performance looks stunning in Cyberpunk, and I wasn't able to see a difference on the Titan's display compared to DLSS quality. Again, I know that framegen is hidden behind a significant paywall, and it's only supported with the 40 and 50 series cards. But I would still urge you guys to keep an open mind about it, since it's really quite crazy to go from basically unplayable to a super smooth high FPS gaming experience with just a few clicks. I did the same thing in Indiana Jones, and this time I even opted for path tracing, and with native FPS numbers below 20, well, I was very skeptical myself, since for framegen to work properly you usually need a bit more FPS to begin with. But it seems like the initial boost from DLSS performance is enough, and with 4x framegen I was still able to get to the display's native refresh rate in 4K with path tracing. And again, I would not have a problem enjoying the game this way. It's super smooth, and even with mouse and keyboard input lag wasn't a problem for me personally, and given that I did my initial playthrough with a controller anyway, this is simply an amazing experience. But I know these things are subjective, so this is my experience and your mileage will vary here. Alright, that leaves us with fan noise, and as you might expect, if you push the Titan in its performance mode with a heavy load, things get loud, even though I still find it quite reasonable for what you get in return. I mostly use this puppy in what MSI calls the MSI AI engine, which is supposed to learn what you do over time and adjust power and fan curves accordingly. I do not know how much of this is actually happening and how much of it is marketing. I can only tell you guys that it worked well for me while playing games and editing our videos, so that's that. Please enjoy our noise samples, and as always, if you like what we've done so far and feel entertained, please consider liking the video and hitting that subscribe button. BatteryLife for the massive notebook is alright for its size, even though it still offers not a lot to write home about, and both the Scar 18 and Gigabyte Aorus Master we already tested offer longer runtimes despite their smaller batteries. Alright folks, that's the 2025 MSI Titan 18HX, and I'm kinda torn to be quite honest. Yes, if you can get the 2024 model for a good price, the overall performance figures might make the last gen Titan the better deal, and you can go all bonkers with your RAM configurations, and in general, having a high-end gaming laptop without G-Sync is a real big bummer in 2025. Then again, if you want to buy a laptop right now and you want the best of what is available, the Titan should definitely still be on your shortlist. The display offers a simply stunning visual experience, especially in HDR games and for pretty much everything else as well. The performance you are getting from a still somewhat mobile machine is simply crazy, and with all the ports you could ask for, usable battery life and amazing build quality, the Titan offers a lot for its premium asking price. If it's worth it to you, well, if you have to think about it, then this one is most likely not for you. But if you look at the 18-inch monster and think, I can have all of this in a laptop, well, then this is the perfect laptop for you. But as always, let me know what you think below, and that's already it from my end for today. Thanks a ton for watching and for all the engagement in these last few videos. We really, truly appreciated everything you liked and commented on, and I will still do my very best to answer everything for as long as I can. My name is Alex, you have been absolutely fantastic, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one. Take care.